Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Melinda Hart. You are watching Stamping with Hart. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin Up, and today we are going to be making more alternate projects using the August 2022 Paper Pumpkin Kit Sweet Sunflowers. Before I jump into that, I want to mention the next three kits. We've gotten a teaser from Paper Pumpkin, so September, October, and November are going to be holiday kits. I have a link in the description below if you would like to sign up for Paper Pumpkin. September is going to be Halloween. It's going to be 18 treat boxes. It's going to be adorable. You're not going to want to miss it. And if you want to sign up for a 3-month prepaid subscription from me using my host code, and I will have a link in the description below, I will send you a free past Paper Pumpkin kit as a thank you for getting the 3-month prepaid and for crafting along with me with the next 3 months of kits, which are going to be holiday. That expires on August 31st, 2022, and that promotion is from me directly. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. We're going to jump into the tutorial now. So today's video is about creating a background with the stamp sets, or I should say with the stamp set from the August 2022 Paper Pumpkin Kit. So we're going to go through the stamps. We have this leafy branch. We have the sunflower, the center of the sunflower. We have the bee. There are actually 2 bees and the leaf. And those are going to be the stamps that we're going to use to create our backgrounds. I'm giving a shout out to the Beautiful Shapes dies because we're going to be using those on a couple of our alternate projects as well. I thought that these were too much fun, the hexagons, to coordinate with this kit because we have the bee theme and we have those foil sheets and all of that. So that whole honeycomb vibe, right? So we're going to incorporate some of those hexagon die cuts while we're working on this kit or while we're working on additional alternates. So that was the free gift, those 8 foil sheets, the honeycomb foil sheets, and we're going to be using those on our cards as well. But that is a quick look at what the background looks like, and we're going to build the background together. I decided to use Stays On ink, which is safe to use with a watercolor technique. We're going to be using the water painters. You get 3 in a pack. You get 3 different size brushes with it. You can fill the barrels with water, which makes it even easier when you're doing your watercoloring. We're also going to be using some re-inkers to shade all of our background stamped images today, and I'll go over those colors with you too. So what we're going to do is we're going to build out the scene step by step, and I decided to speed this up because it takes time to do a watercolor background in real time. And I also created 6 cards, so that was going to make for a very long video. So I didn't speed it up too much. I've definitely slowed down the pace of when I fast forward videos, but I'm actually doing my voiceover in a different room today, so I apologize if it sounds like there's an echo. I hope not. But what we're doing is we're just getting our sunflowers down first. Now, this is watercolor paper. This is actually 6x9. I ran out of the full sheets of my Fluid 100 paper, which is what Stampin' Up carries. So I'm actually using some watercolor paper that my son has in his craft room. And I cut it in half because it was actually like 9x12 or something like that. So it's a little bit of an awkward shape, but we're going to cut it down into different pieces for our card panels anyway. So when you are creating a background, the number one thing that I can say is don't be intimidated by it. I think the most important thing when you're creating backgrounds is to just start stamping. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you may know that I really like to create backgrounds, particularly with Paper Pumpkin kits. And when I found out that the August kit was sold out and that there wouldn't be any refills when I was planning my, my second alternate video, I thought, let's utilize the stamps. Like, let's find a way to create something pretty with the stamp set because you can keep the stamp set forever and forever. So when the consumables, all the paper and the embellishments and the die cuts are gone from your Paper Pumpkin kit, you're still going to have that stamp set that you can use year after year at this time of the year when sunflowers are so beautiful and in bloom. Okay, so step one is putting down our flowers. Leave yourself about maybe an inch and a half of space in between each flower. Just stamp them around as you'd like. And that's so that we can fit in some of our leaves throughout the background, okay? So we're basically creating our own designer series paper here. And you can stamp your leaves however many you like, wherever you like. I just try to start filling in gaps. When I start noticing that there's a large white space in between stamped images, that's typically where I stamp. Now, the way that I stamp this background, there's going to be some overlap. I didn't do, perfect masking or anything like that. And you can decide if that's something that you would like to do or not. And when I say overlap, I mean that leaf overlaps a couple of the flower petals for the sunflower, things like that. So you can decide if you want to sort of mask off and cover those flowers, and then just do the edge of the leaf, so that it's sort of a continuous or a seamless, is what I should say, stamped image. But I did not mind the layering. So you can totally decide if that's for you or not. And you can see just sort of the way that I'm going through and filling in. Now, we're going to be bringing in this, little thing of flowers, the sunflower pieces that haven't quite bloomed yet. And I'm going to be sort of adding those throughout, again, where I have white space. But I also wanted to pair them with the leaves where I could, just to try to make it look a little bit more natural. Now, I don't know that much about sunflowers, so I can't say that this is like nature accurate, but I thought it looked really pretty. And you can tell me whether or not you think it looks good too in the end of the video when you see the cards. But I love creating backgrounds. It's kind of like putting pieces of a puzzle together. So I'm just going through here, adding in and filling in those corners. When you're creating a background in particular, I think it's important to kind of do those half images on the edges. I think it makes it look very realistic. Now for the center of my flowers, I wanted the main color to be brown and not black. So I stamped off once so that I could at least get the detail aspect of it, but I wanted them to be brown. So I just decided to do a lighter version. So I stamped off all of the centers of each of these flowers so that I could really make a rich brown color with the soft suede and later with early espresso. So I ended up doing two backgrounds. This is the first background, and this is the one where I do the traditional sunflowers. And I will give you the colors, but the sunflower themselves are in crushed curry ink. Now, just before I jump ahead of myself, there are two different Bs. There's a side angle B and there's a looking straight down at B. And I did the side angle B on this first panel, and I did the straight B looking down and seeing both of his little wings on the second background panel. So on this first background panel, you can see there's still some white, there's still some space in between all of the things that we've stamped. So I'm filling in with my Bs. I don't want to do too many, but I definitely want enough that we notice it and that we have them on, multiple pieces when we start cutting this apart. Now remember, we have those really cute die cut Bs too. So you can use those as well if you don't want to stamp your Bs. But for our color combinations here on this first panel, we're going to be using soft suede for the centers. We're going to be using crushed curry for the flowers. I'm using old olive for the leaf, and I am using, it was Blackberry Bliss, but very, very light Blackberry Bliss for those little sprigs of sunflowers that haven't quite bloomed yet. So that's the color combo. I decided not to do any sort of a background color, so I just left it the color of the watercolor paper around the flowers and the leaves and all of that. I kind of liked the look of that in the end. So you can see that my my scrap paper's been through it. I ran out of my pack. I have to get a new one. But here is where we're going to start doing our coloring. And you just want to, get a few drops. I'm using my clear blocks to create this, look. I did a separate block for my crushed curry because I knew I was going to be using a ton of yellow on this panel. Now, I do want to talk for just a minute about watercolor paper. I do think it's important to use watercolor paper if you're doing a very large background like this because it's going to be saturated. We're going to be using a lot of water on it. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating a sort of a wash, a lighter version of the color. And I'm going to do that with every step in every stamped image before I lay down my full color. Now, one of the best things about watercolor is that you can actually layer the color. So you can either heat set it or let it dry and then come back in and do another layer. And you can create some really beautiful sort of shading and things like that. But I am basically working at the most basic level with watercolor, honestly. I'm not a detailed watercolor person, but I do love my water painters. I love how easy it is to do this technique on a basic level. And I think it's perfect for Paper Pumpkin, especially because the artist who created this month's kit, which everybody is loving, did watercolor work on this. So it kind of ties right in with the theme. So you can see I'm going back in. I'm getting a little bit more of that color and a little bit less water as I'm layering in. So the more water, the lighter the color. The less water, the more deep and intense the color. So you're just going to take a couple of drops of water, per each color on your clear block so that you can create a little palette and a little mix for yourself. And you're going to go in and you're going to go through and do this. Now you could try to do this technique on the basic white thick. I've heard that it works well on shimmer paper, but I do not recommend it for the regular basic white. I would definitely recommend using the Fluid 100 watercolor paper, or if you have watercolor paper handy in your craft space, just use that. So now I'm just cleaning off my brush. I tend to use my middle-sized brush the most. It's just my favorite tip. I just use it a lot, so I'm using it here for our flowers too. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to create that wash again, and the reason that I'm doing that is because it's easier to kind of do a very light wash and get some water down on the paper before I start bringing in that more intense color. If I go straight to full color and don't wet my brush or wet the paper, it can create a sort of stain, or it could make it look very uneven. So when you lay down that wash first and get that base color there, you're really helping to get that watercolor prepped, and it will look more natural and more beautiful, I think, when you start layering that color on later. And you can see I have different variations here because I was getting a little bit closer to the ink, or I was mixing more ink with the water. So it's not going to be perfectly exactly the same each time, but it actually is such, if you enjoy coloring, I think you're really going to like watercoloring. And you can let me know in the comments if you've tried this technique before. I would love to know. So as I'm going through, I'm going to go around and I'm going to do a second layer. Now, I did want to say that in the kit, the two greens are Mossy Meadow and Evening Evergreen, but I used Old Olive on these leaves, not for any particular reason. I just grabbed Old Olive instead of Mossy Meadow. I didn't realize. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I removed a little bit of water from my brush so that I could really get more of the crushed curry on there than the water, because I wanted this color to look really intense. And I'm just going to repeat that process with every sunflower, just like we did with the first round. And like I said, this is going to be the process for all of the stamped images with the exception of the bee. So what I'm doing is I'm just following the artist's, details and work on the sunflower right around that center where you're seeing all of the detail in those petals and the darker colors. That's really where I was focusing the majority of the crushed curry, and then just sort of pulling out the rest of the color so that it sort of softens as you get to the edges of the flower. And I bet you that this would look, equally gorgeous with Daffodil Delight or So Saffron. So, and you could even layer, I was Googling images, And they have, you know, sunflowers that are different colors. And then they almost look like they're tinged orange, you know, like orange closer to the center and then yellow the further that you go out. And then I had a conversation. I received an email from this woman. Her name is Susie, and she is always watching my channel, and she's commenting. And she emailed me, and we were talking about the paper pumpkin kit being sold out. And she mentioned that when, you know, her whole life she had sunflowers, and she had actually had these burgundy sunflowers that grew like 15 feet tall. And when she was telling me that, I just had this image in my mind. I was like, I have to do this panel in burgundy too. I think that that is just going to be so stunning. So Susie, thank you for that idea. I wanted to give Susie a shout out because I just thought that that was so cool. And the burgundy flowers really, I think, lean more towards fall when we're seeing these sunflowers that we know are very popular right now at the end of summer. But the burgundy ones just kind of have that touch to it that really sort of remind me of the changing of the colors of fall. So I did not film myself creating that second panel because you guys get the point watching this first round here. But I will show you the completed panel because we're going to be making some cards with the burgundy sunflowers in addition to our classic sunflowers. So in the first alternate video, what I had done was, oh, and let me talk about this for just a second. I took the smallest detail water painter and I'm just very lightly touching into the Blackberry Bliss in a combination of water, just really air light, like feather light. And I'm just adding a little hint of color to the image itself. So starting at the base and kind of like just doing like a little flicking technique up so that it almost looks wispy. That was the goal with that. And so with Blackberry Bliss, I really wanted to be careful because that is such a deep dark color and it's a beautiful coordinating color, but I didn't want it to overtake the sunflowers, right? Because that of course is the star of the show. So you can see this is all starting to come together now, and I'm setting it with my heat tool because just in case you make a mistake, you know, this is a larger panel and you don't want to get it on your hands and then, you know, put your hand back down and then imprint it somewhere. So it's always good to heat set it. And with watercolor painters and with the watercolor paper, it can bend once it gets wet. So this is a good way to sort of warm it up and kind of bend it back into a flat shape. And I always recommend just using a little extra adhesive when you're working with the watercolor panels too. So here I'm using the Daffodil Delight watercolor pencil, and I'm not going to wet it. I literally just wanted to have a different texture for the bee, something to, you know, just sort of set him apart from the sunflowers. And they're so teeny tiny. I don't really know if it makes that big of a difference. You could probably very easily just color it with your water paint or with the crushed curry too. I'm sure it would be fine. But I just got it in my mind that I was going to use the watercolor pencil, and just know that that's an option for you too. If you have those at home, you could do this whole panel with the watercolor pencils, for example. So, you know, on the leaves, I didn't get to mention that that's just Old Olive. So just variations of Old Olive, the lighter with the wash, and then the darker and towards the center in the vein of the leaf. Okay. So this was part of my Facebook Live. This first portion of the video was what I had actually done live. So I created the watercolor panel live, and I created this card live. So this is an A2 size card, basic black card base. I really wanted to do a black, white, and gold, or black, white, and sunflower theme for this card. I knew with this ribbon that it didn't feel right for the alternates that I was working on in the last video, but I definitely wanted to bring it back and do that because they're just like, it's like quintessential. Like I feel like they just go together. So I wrapped it around my panel 3 times, and then we're just going to adhere the panel to the card base. I really wanted this to be bold. Our sunflowers are very bold, and I wanted that ribbon to show up. That ribbon is very thin. So I really wanted you to be able to see it, right? Like just unapologetically yellow, white, and black. So this is one of the vellum honeycomb die cuts, and we're going to use this on this circle die. This circle die is from the Beautiful Shapes dies, and it etches in, or I should say it embosses in this really cool sort of lined frame edge on it. I'm stamping Hello and Blackberry Bliss, and I'm using that Hexagon. This is one of the smaller Hexagon shapes, and I'm going to pop this up on dimensionals. And then we're going to add a couple of those die cut bees because they're so cute. And I'm pretty sure I added, I can't remember if it was the iridescent rhinestones. I really love the look of the iridescent rhinestones with the sunflowers. I brought in a few different elements, but right here what I'm doing is I'm grabbing one bee in each direction. So I wanted to have them coming in from each side. So I'm just going to pop a mini dimensional on the back of those. And that I think is going to finish out the greetings panel, but I'm trying to remember if I did the iridescent rhinestones or not. But this is the first card. So this was the card that I actually made live. So for those of you who were watching the Facebook Live, the next part of this video is pre-recorded, which means I did this, outside of my Facebook Live because I didn't have everything designed and I didn't have everything ready in time. And after my conversation with Susie, I was like, I really want to create these burgundy flowers. I wanted to add to the video, especially because I figure I'm not going to get to make another video with this particular paper pumpkin kit. And it was so beautiful and there's so much that you can do with it. So I was really happy that I was able to bring in those elements that I initially thought of with this set, which was the Hexagon dies from the Beautiful Shapes dies. And then, of course, we're still using elements from the kit. Yeah, I did bring in the iridescent rhinestones. I knew I was going to do it. They really stand out against the black. So that was the card that I made on my live. But I actually made a total of 6 cards. So there were 2 versions, and this is from the same watercolor panel. So the panel that I cut was actually 4 by 5 1/4. For each of those cards. And then you can see I still had a piece of panel left over and I can use that on something later. And then we're also going to have the burgundy panel. Oh, you guys, so I lost my white heat embossing powder. I could not find it anywhere. It was at the very bottom of my adhesive basket. Don't ask me how it got there. I must have dropped it in there by mistake, but I finally found it. Okay, so from this point on, 22 minutes into the video, yeah. From this point on, this is all pre-recorded, meaning I did not film this live. Okay, so these were those free gift Hexagon panels. I think they called it like a foil honeycomb sheet. So this was the second panel. This was also watercolored. I do have one additional element on this. I did add Wink of Stella to the centers of the flowers. Wanted to give it a little extra dimension just to see what would happen. And I love how it turned out. So let's talk about the colors of these flowers really quickly since you didn't get to see me coloring it. I used Mary Merlot and I did the same layering technique where the first layer was lighter. This is a card base from the kit that I'm cutting in half and we're gonna make the most of that. But I used Mary Merlot for the sunflower. I used Mossy Meadow for the leaves. I used crushed curry for those little sprigs of, little budding flowers. And I used the different bee. I also used early espresso instead of soft suede for the base of the sunflower, just to get a deeper sort of tone and look to this to make it look a little bit different from the other. And what I initially decided to do with this panel was cut it in half. Now, for those of you who like the one sheet wonder concept, I think that this could be a great opportunity for that, regardless, of the size of your panel, whether you do the 5x7 Fluid 100 panel, or if you cut your own size, or if you're doing 6x6, whatever you choose to do. There are all different size, one sheet wonders that you could do. Now, I did not technically do a one sheet wonder for this. And I'm cutting 2 card bases here, by the way, in basic white cardstock. And we're going to glue our panels to this card base. And this is going to be one of those flip open card bases. But when you're creating your own, stamped and watercolor background, a one sheet wonder could be a great option. And it could be a great way to use up the leftover pieces in your kit. Personally, I think that all of the card bases in this kit could be cut in half and used as layers instead of as card bases, But that, of course, is for the alternate version. So for those of you who are new to Paper Pumpkin and maybe you're not interested in making anything outside of what was pre-designed in the kit, that's totally fine. That's what Paper Pumpkin was, created for. But for those of us who do have a lot of supporting product, right? Like we have a lot of the colors and the cardstocks and all of the things that match to our kits. This is a great way to extend the life of your kit. So that's always my intention when I am making alternate videos. If you want to use your Paper Pumpkins just as they are, the way that the Paper Pumpkin team designed this kit was so stunning. I mean, I heard from so many of you in my first alternate video saying that you agreed that this was like your favorite kit. This was in your top 5, your top 3. Everybody loved this kit. So the cards, just as they were made, are wonderful, but these are those additional options that we can do here. So what I was trying to do is whenever I use these specialty panels, these foil panels, I want to at least have some of the panel, I don't want to cover the whole thing up with my basic white layer, right? So this took me a few minutes to kind of get the layout of my card. I was using different die cut pieces just to try to see what greeting I wanted to use and what size die cut I wanted to use with my panel. I knew I was going to use that gold shimmer ribbon. I just used that for my Rustic Harvest class and it's like in my mind and I wanted to keep it going because I love gold. I think gold is so wonderful for fall, but we have pops of gold in the Paper Pumpkin kit this month. So I really had to, take advantage of that and make the most of it. So I am gluing the card base panel, the one that was originally a card from Paper Pumpkin, onto a basic white card base. And I'm going to use it as a layer instead. And then we have a Mary Merlot layer. So that card base was literally just cut in half. So it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I didn't make any changes to that. And then this panel, I think this is 4 by 5 1/4. And I cut the Mary Merlot cardstock layer to the same exact size. So I'm just gluing these panels together. I did have a little squishy glue thing down in that bottom corner, but nobody notices once it dries, but you could always put like a bee over it or something like that, whatever embellishment you want. So we're going to glue this panel down next. And then did I put, no. So we're going to put the ribbon on the sunflower layer. And I was trying to get my sizing right for that sunflower layer. And I kept trimming it down and trimming it down. And I think I settled on, it was either 3 1/4 or 3 1/2 by, I think 4 3/4 or 4 1/2. I really wanted to frame that in. So I might have gone with the 3 1/4. It was a little bit smaller than what I typically do. And because I was using a watercolor panel, I decided to give it a little extra reinforcement by getting my foam adhesive sheet. This is the one that you can cut to whatever size you want. So basically it's a gigantic dimensional. And I'm just going to pop the whole thing on the back of that. And I know it won't be curly or bendy after I do that. I mean, I love these things. I don't use them enough, but I love them. They're super sticky. So don't take the backing off until you're ready. And then I just popped that right onto my panel. So I love the way that that all came together. And then I'm going to use my Mary Merlot ink to stamp my sentiment. And I think this was the one that I stamped thank you for. I could have done the whole Paper Pumpkin kit with thank you cards because I just have been needing so many thank you cards lately. Let me know in the comments if that's a card that you often send out. But yeah, so we did our thank you on this version, but what I tried to do with the 6 alternate cards in this video was I tried to use every sentiment or every greeting. I literally tried to use every single stamp in the Paper Pumpkin kit, especially when I'm making alternates. I really try to make it a point to use what they put in the kit. And I do think I was able to use them all. Don't quote me, but I think over the 6 cards in the background, I think I was able to get them all in there. And I really thought that that bee was so cute. And on this bee, where you can see both sides of his wings, I decided to color his wings with just a hint of gray granite and water. So just a very watery version of gray granite to kind of set those wings apart from the background. So here, we're going to start building out our next set of cards. So I was trying to decide when I am recording myself designing, sometimes my brain doesn't work as quickly as I wanted to. So I decided to cut this half of the cardstock into another card base, and I decided to reverse the idea of using the gold foil layer with the Mary Merlot. So I like the way that that gold foil sheet looks against darker cardstock. I think it just really pops when you do that. I really want that to stand out on the cards. So I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do that again, but then this time I will do something a little bit different with my layers. Now, you can do the entire sunflower panel if that's what you like to do, but I decided to do something a little bit clever, and I cut some of the images out with my hexagons. And then I cut frames out of that Mossy Meadow card base to frame in my hexagons. So you can decide if this is for you or not. Sometimes when people do all of the work of watercoloring that image, they really don't want to alter it in any way. But for me, I did want to do a few different ideas, give you guys some ideas. I like to experiment with the images, and I actually really love the way that the layout for this card turned out. So I did use my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, again, with the beautiful shapes dies. There are several different sizes of hexagons. The sunflower is cut out in the largest hexagon, and then the two smaller ones, I think, were a size down. So this is the largest hexagon, again, that I am using with the Mossy Meadow card base. This is just in case you guys are going to recreate these cards, just so that you know I'm using that largest size. And then I'm cutting it twice, because what I ended up doing, I was trying to decide if I wanted to use that big sunflower, and I decided not to do that. I thought it was like sort of taking over the card. I was kind of losing the details of the hexagons. So I went with the two smaller hexagons that were framed in, and I left the big sunflower out. And I ended up taking a scrap strip that I had from the watercolor panel and using that strip as a decorative element across the center of the card to kind of break up the two hexagons just a little bit. And then there was like a little bit of neutral territory to put my sentiment right in the center, which my eye tends to gravitate towards the center when I'm creating projects. So I'm bringing in that black and white gingham ribbon again. I just wrapped it around the edges of this panel. I believe that this panel was cut. It was like I want to say like 1 by 4 inches for that strip. And then this is a die cut from the kit. With the black and white gingham ribbon, for some reason, it moves around on me. It's a little bit squirrely. So I tend to secure the black and white ribbon, the gingham ribbon, with a glue dot. And it's up to you whether or not you want to do that. You could always reinforce it in other ways, but I always just kind of tuck a glue dot behind it. So I'm getting out that other sentiment. This is, I think this is like wishing you happiness or something like that on your special day, something along those lines. But it's a 2-line sentiment, and I was worried it wasn't going to fit, but it fit perfectly. Which of course I should know better, because that's what they designed it for with the paper pumpkin team. So I adhered these panels together, and then I popped both hexagons up on dimensionals, and I decided to set them on opposite sides. So this one goes bottom right, the other one goes top left, and then we're going to put our sentiment in the center. And we're going to finish with some of those super cute bees, the die cut bees, that is. We're going to put the die cut bees up on the mini dimensionals again. I did that several times. I think I used a ton of those little bees between these two alternate video cards and the original cards that I created from the paper pumpkin kit. So I really hope that you guys are enjoying crafting with your kit. Let me know in the comments if you have started crafting with your August paper pumpkin kit yet. And if you make alternates with your kit, or if you stick to the original card design, you know, no problem either way. I just love to hear the way that people are creating with their kits. I had some people tell me that they hadn't had a chance to work on their kits yet. And I mean, certainly I'm never going to judge you, because there's so many things that I have sitting in my craft room that I haven't made stuff with yet. I have a whole pile of things that I want to make videos with, and I'm hoping to do that this fall. One of the top things being that masking paper. Oh my goodness, if I could ever get to use that masking paper, I will be so happy. So here you can see the layout sort of coming together here. I love the way that those hexagons turned out by like cutting out the images. It's such an interesting card to me. We have hexagons all over the place. So I'm popping all of these things up on dimensionals, and my dimensional sheet was getting low, so I'm using all of the ends and edges of mine. And I am using my own regular size dimensionals, and then of course mini dimensionals, but adhesives do come in your paper pumpkin kit every single month. So if you don't have a ton of adhesives yet, if you're just starting to get your collection going, or if you're just starting to decide if you want to make cards with paper pumpkin kits, then, you know, don't worry about it. The adhesive will be there, but you'll always see me using other adhesives in the alternate videos. Okay, so these are the festive pearls in gold. I just wanted to sort of tuck one on either end of this. It felt right for the cut of that sentiment. And I used Mary Merlot ink for the sentiment, if I didn't already say that. And then that's it for this card. So I really love the way that this one turned out. Really unusual, but really cool. Okay, so for this panel, I really wanted to break it up a little bit. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because if you look in the upper left, you can see that the impression on the stamped sunflower was not that great. Like, I did not do the best job on that. And one of the best ways to cover that up is to either, you know, layer something over top of it, which of course, you know, is fine. Or you can do something a little more clever, like cut it into strips. So that's what I decided to do. So I ended up cutting these strips to 1 by 4. I cut 4 of them. And then I'm also going to cut frames in Blackberry Bliss cardstock. And that's going to be 1 1/8 by 4 1/8, also 4 panels. And what I should have done was I should have trimmed this down to 4 inches before I cut the strips, but I did not do that. And then when I realized they looked a little bit longer than 4 inches, I had to sort of trim them down to size. But, you know, just so you know, if you want to make your life easier, learn from me. And then you won't have to cut them all one at a time. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but there is, you know, time and efficiency, and I tend not to be either of those when it comes to crafting in my craft room. So then what we're going to do is just a really simple layout. And the other thing that I could really kick myself for doing is I used a card base from the paper pumpkin kit, and I should have cut the card base in half, and I didn't. And I ended up using the whole card, and there's like a decorative element on the back of this card that I ended up doing. And I considered cutting it up after the fact, like after I assembled the whole thing. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to share it on the video with you that I did not get it right. I definitely, I make mistakes too, and I forget to do things too. I have like all these mental notes that I'm going to conserve and use all these pieces, and I'm going to maximize the value of my kit. And then sometimes I make a mistake. So if you do that too, you're not alone. We all make mistakes. But at the end of the day, it's just a really super pretty card on both sides. So here you can see that's like a watercolor panel side. So you see what I mean about cutting that card base in half and using it as layers. Like that's what I would recommend for those of you who haven't cut it up or used it yet. So we're going to glue all these panels down. This is actually a really simple card layout. We're going to do a sentiment that goes with it. And I decided to put it, I think, just sort of nested inside that big sunflower in the center. And then we're going to finish with a couple of embellishments. Okay, so while I'm finishing up this card, I want to talk about Celebration and that it is ending incredibly soon. So if you've made it this far into the video, if you're still hanging in with me at the 39-minute mark, congratulations, you are like in the 20%. So I hope you're still enjoying the video and the cards. I'm going to show all of the cards in detail in the end. But what I want to talk about right now, just very quickly, is Celebration. Celebration ends on August 31st, 2022. And with that, the free rewards that you can earn when you spend $50 or $100 with a qualifying purchase before tax, and you get to choose what you want from the Celebration brochure. So if there was anything that you wanted to get and it's still available, I would definitely recommend shopping and getting what you need before the end of August, because once Celebration is over, then that promotion ends. The other thing that will be ending on August 31st is getting the Making Plans collection free when you purchase the starter kit with Stampin' Up. So if you're going to be spending more than $99 on product in the next few months, if for making your cards or your memory keeping or whatever it is that you like to create, consider this option. It is the best deal that Stampin' Up has to offer. You choose $125 worth of product. You only pay $99. You do pay tax, but you get free shipping on the starter kit and you get the Making Plans collection for free. So if you haven't already seen the Making Plans collection, it is an 18-month planner that runs through December 2023. There are calendar layouts, inserts, stickers, a stamp set that coordinates with it, 3 notebooks. It is an incredible free gift when you get the starter kit. So if that is something that you've had your eye on, that's going to end on August 31st. The only way you can get it is when you purchase the starter kit. So if you have questions about that, or if you feel like this is the right time for you, then that is a great opportunity. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you join Stampin' Up, you get 20% off of your purchases. You get to be the first to see the catalogs before they are released to the public. You also have the opportunity to order certain products. It's called a pre-order before they are released to the public. So there's a crafting community. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So if you have any questions, be sure to let me know. If you have a wish list, this is a great time because, like I said, you get to customize that kit and put whatever products that you want into it as part of your starter kit. And there might be a few, exceptions on that. But for the most part, if you, had bundles or stamp sets, or maybe you want to replenish and you want to start, stocking up on all of your adhesives and your card stock and all of that before the holidays start rolling around and you do all of that holiday crafting, then that could be a great way to get a savings on that product as well. Okay, so I kind of forgot to hit the camera. I forgot to film myself making this whole card, but you get the point. So we are, again, bringing in one of those watercolor background panels. I'm bringing in this black and white gingham ribbon again. I am using 2 different elements from the kit. I am using that Mossy Meadow card base again as a layer. Actually, I'm using it as a card base on this particular card. And then I took a piece of basic black and I put it behind this this die cut piece that came with the kit that has that honeycomb frame, but I replaced the center image with my watercolored sunflowers. So that was just a little bit more of a bold choice. And you can sort of see those other flowers kind of peeking out from the sides. But I really like the way that it nested right in. So I believe that measurement for the sunflower water panel is 2 3/4 by 4 inches. And again, I'm securing this with 2 glue dots. I tied the bow separately because it's just easier for me to do it that way. And I am going to be incorporating iridescent rhinestones with this card because I love the way the iridescent rhinestones look against the black. And then my challenge with this card was, where was I going to put the sentiment? Where was I going to put my little greeting? And I decided to cut this. I cut about 1/3 of it off. I left the yellowish watercolor side intact. And I ended up just stamping hello and then putting this half on a dimensional and half glued because my watercolor panel is raised up on dimensionals. And I have it half on and half off of the watercolor panel. So whenever you have these darker layers, you know, these sentiments and things like that can really pop. So I wanted to sort of bring it off of the watercolor layer a little bit so that that could stand out and so that your eye would be drawn to that hello. It's not the biggest stamp in the world, right? But you will be able to see it with the way that I have it set on here. So just in case you're wondering why it's like half and half, it's because the panel is raised, but the whole thing wasn't. So I'm going to pop the end up on a dimensional, and then I'm going to just use a little bit of my Stampin' Seal Plus to make sure that it stays secured to my watercolor panel as well. And I just thought that was an adorable little touch. I loved the way that that looked. So just know you don't have to keep all of your die cut panels in place. You can cut them up if you don't already and use those for other things. And if I didn't already say it, I do have a link for more information on purchasing the starter kit in the description box below. Okay, so we are finishing up this card with our iridescent rhinestones. I couldn't resist putting on a bee, but this time I put the bee between the sunflower and the sentiment. And that was how that one turned out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start bringing in all of my cards so that you can get a good look at them. There are 6 in total. 2 are the same layout, and then these are the rest. So technically I would say there are 5 additional alternates here, and all were created with that watercolor background in mind. And that is utilizing the stamp set from your Paper Pumpkin kit. You know, these are top quality stamps. There's so much detail in them. I mean, look at what you can create with those. That is why the Paper Pumpkin kits are such an incredible value. You get all of this stuff that you can use in your kits and make these incredible cards. So I just can't communicate enough that if you haven't tried Paper Pumpkin yet, or if you have had it before and maybe you canceled your subscription, this might be a great time to consider coming back, especially with the next 3 kits being all about holiday, because we are going to have so much fun making the kits, making alternates with the kits, and I would love to have you crafting along with me. So if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do alternate Paper Pumpkin videos every month in addition to regular card crafting tutorials. Give this a like, a comment, and if you have any information or any questions for me, please be sure to leave them. Thank you.